Welcome to the Tone Lounge Podcast, the definitive music industry and gear podcast with Jonathan Gilmet and Frank Fleckenstein.
What's up, guys? Good morning to all of you out there listening and watching this episode of the Tone Lounge Podcast. It's episode number 23. We had a little bit of a break due to various things that happened in both our lives. But yeah, we're back to recording this one, which is going to be slightly delayed from our usual time. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we dive into things. David Sellers, the chosen winner of the Pink Wallow, has not been reaching out to us, and I'm afraid that that's really his last chance to reach out and write us an email or whatever way to communicate with us, because the next time we are sitting in front of the camera, we are actually going to choose someone else as the winner. I think this is fairness to everybody else kind of dominates that. So
I think so too.
Yeah. David Sellers, please reach out. And yeah, lots of stuff has happened. You've been away. You've been on vacation, right?
2 weeks ago, I spent a week in Scotland.
Nice.
So I'm kind of trying to catch up on all the places that I wanted to go that I couldn't go before I moved back to Canada. I had 2 years robbed from me when we first moved here because of the whole pandemic thing. So there was 2 years where we couldn't travel. So we had to take the 4 years that we spent here and crunch everything up in the last 2 years. And actually, it's like everybody kind of does that. But yeah, so Scotland was a place I wanted to go, and man, it's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I've been to a few places over there. My mom actually went on a hiking trip to Scotland like 2 years ago, I believe, or last year, and she liked it that much that she was like, "Oh, I could actually imagine living over there." So
yeah, absolutely. Same thing with me. Yeah. It's not only is it gorgeous, but the thing is that the people are super nice. Like,
so I've heard.
Never experienced that. Yeah. We lived in we stayed in a small village, and we were walking around, and people would say good morning, good evening to us.
Yeah.
Which I was like, they're not trying to steal my wallet. That's cool. Yeah, quite different.
It's always nice.
Yeah, that was quite the trip, man.
Nice.
How about
Very
you?
good.
What have you been up to?
Oh god, the usual stuff. Following what's happening in the industry. I've seen a few releases of new stuff, but to be honest, and as we talked beforehand, nothing that really blew me away. I saw that Jeff Loomis has a Seymour Duncan signature humbucker now. And apparently he went from actives to passives, which that's a good move. I love passive pickups more than I love actives, with the exception of the Fishman Fluence, but that's a different beast to me.
Yeah.
What else? We saw the Wolfgang Van Halen, the EVH signature guitars, which I think they're nice because they're like semi hollow, and it's refreshing to see that, especially given the musical context. So yeah, thumbs up to that. But other than that, I haven't seen that much where I was like, wow, this needs to be, we need to cover this in depth and talk about the whys and hows and whatnot. I saw that you had a chance to review the new Wampler pedal, which essentially is a recreation of the Moss Torsion, the MT10 by Ibanez.
Yeah.
What's your takeaways?
So my takeaways is that, first off, like, I never played the original. So I was aware of that pedal, but I've never gotten to play it. I know that there's some tweaking to the circuit. I think Brian did a whole video on like how he modified it, and like he actually put cascading like MOSFET that like cascade into one another to create the overdrive, which the original circuit didn't really do. And to me, from my experience, like it kind of reacts and feels under the fingers similar to the ZVEX Distortron. So there's a similarity there between both of them. Like you can bring down the distortion really low and you still get that edge of breakup thing going on. But then when you increase it, I mean, it's usable throughout the sweep of the gain, which I really love because there's not a whole lot of pedals that do that. There's some pedals like, let's say something like the Full Tone OCD, right? The Full Tone OCD is kind of like one of those, you find the sweet spot and you kind of leave it there because if you go beyond that threshold, it starts to fold in on itself. It doesn't sound very good. This pedal doesn't do that. Like this pedal, like pretty much anywhere you put it, it's great. And another weird thing with it is that as you increase the gain, you don't really need to fiddle with the level of the pedal, which I've never experienced before. Because usually when you increase the gain, you feel like the level comes up, right? So then you have to adjust the level as you...
Yeah, the original does that. Maybe that's where Brian Wampler went a little bit more in depth and actually kind of tweaked it so that it wouldn't do that. And the cascading, the like CMOS chips, like maybe the way he, I don't know the schematic, but I know the original schematic, and there it definitely will actually build a clone at some point while I was like studying circuits, and I know that I had to like get down with the level every time I increased the gain. So yeah. So this one doesn't do that, and I also found that the EQ doesn't need to be tailored so much. Like sometimes as you increase that gain, you get that boost in the low end and the high end. And this one here, I didn't feel like I had to tweak all that much. Like it was more subtle moves. So I don't know what he does, man, but seriously, Brian is freaking brilliant when it comes to designing overdrive pedals. Yeah,
like, he's really spot on with that stuff. So yeah, it's a great pedal. I think they initially released or produced 600 of them. I think they were trying to be cautious as to how much people were going to jump on this. They sold out in like 24 hours, but it's not one of those limited edition things. They're going to come out with more of them.
Okay.
So unlike, let's say, the Germanium Tumnus, where they only had like so many parts where they could produce like 1,000 of them or whatever, this is not one of those things. Like this is going to be more of a regular thing from my understanding. So for the people that missed out on the first batch, there's another one coming. Like it's not going to be limited edition, limited production kind of thing. It's going to be more readily available. And it's one of those pedals, like if you don't know where to start with overdrive, that's a cool one. Like it just bumped up in my top 5 overdrive pedals. Wow. It's really that good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the original has been like kind of overlooked by a lot of people back in the days. They were like, oh, okay, wow. So an overdrive with a 3-band EQ. Hey, wow.
Yeah, we haven't seen that before.
Yeah. And also then, also a lot of people thought like, well, why would I need to fiddle with a 3-band EQ? But it became really popular in the Nashville session player scene at some point, like the original, the MT10, but not for like high gain stuff. Actually, people used the output stage a lot. So they would have like a very decent amount, like slight gain, slight distortion, not even something that wouldn't even be considered overdrive. But then they would use the output stage and use the EQ to tailor the sound. And it became like a hot tip for people in that session player scene in Nashville, equal to the ODR 10,
ODR 1,
ODR 1. Sorry,
I think it's the
ODR 1. Yeah, the Nobles, like these two things. I mean, apart from all the stuff that people were already using, like tube skewers and whatnot. But But these two, which were like not the usual like bread and butter pedal, those really made it and became like hot, like secret tools of some of the session players over there. And maybe I gotta check out the Brian Wampler version, because the clone that I built, and I was like trying to stick to the original schematic. It didn't really blow me away that much, but maybe Brian has found a way to improve some of the things.
Yeah, I think these kind of pedals, you have to be playing at a certain volume for them to shine. Like if you're playing them at home, it's not in a band context. You're playing at low volume with, like, let's say a small like Fender Champ or something like that. You might not be getting what you want out of it. But for the guys playing on stage, pretty loud volumes, you kick something in like that, that's where it starts to make more sense. And you just mentioned the ODR1. If you use the Mofetta or the original, what is it, the M10?
MT10,
MT10. So let's say you use the MT10 with the ODR1, you stack them. They're really fucking good together, because I have the Mofetta and the Wampler Bell, which is based off the ODR1, and stacking them together, dude, it sounds good. It's a good tone. Yeah,
stacking stuff has always been my favorite.
Oh,
thing.
Absolutely.
And the combinations are essentially endless. But once you've found the one, like that, once you've found the pair, or maybe the triple, of pedals that really work well together, you're like, that this is going to stay. This is going to stay on.
Yep. And that combination of the Bell and the Mofetta, no matter like if you put one after the other, like the combination you want in the single chain, they sound good. They stack really well together. And that's another thing that I really like with overdrive pedals, like you were mentioning, stacking stuff together. Yeah. That's why the inception of the Arc of Tone was this idea of stacking like two Red Llamas together. Yeah. And turns out that they stack super well. So you're one of those other guys that's really good at making overdrive pedals. Like you try. You really knock it out of the park with those.
I try. By the way, I've also received my my Misniks from Yannis. Okay. We made an exchange. So I sent him an all-you-can-boost, and he sent me his Misniks, and we kind of exchanged pedal. Super weird. I sent it. The first time I sent it via DPD, and it just came back because it says like it said like the recipient couldn't be found. Where like it's an address, Yeah. I even left the phone number, so you could have called him. But so I had to send it a second time, but the second time it actually worked out. And man, I love the Misniks. It's a great thing. It's a great overdrive, especially because it doesn't sound like anything else that I've tried so far. When we talked to him, and he said like, well, there might be some similarities with an OCD from Fulltone. I actually looked. I have like a couple of like plastic boxes where I leave all my projects in. I actually pulled out like an OCD clone that I once built, and like try to compare them. There is a certain similarity when it comes to the gain structure. So maybe there is something that overlaps here, but then everything else has nothing to do with an OCD. So it's really its own little thing. It's very reactive. And since I have the dual channel one, it's like you're essentially saving one pedal on your board. You can just have this one and then change between the two different like sort of gain settings, which is great. So and he got me feedback as well. He also said like the all you can boost is going to stay on his board. He really likes it, and he really thinks also it's a very clever idea. So thanks to Yannis. Thanks for the flowers.
I love hearing that, and that's the thing too with like both these pedals. The all you can boost, like I have my own version of it, which is the blue with the gold knobs.
Yeah.
I remember when I reached out to you and I said, man, I love my all you can boost, but it would be even better if it was blue with gold knobs.
With golden knobs.
Yeah, it's like it would sound even better. And you were like, yeah, okay, maybe I can see about doing that. And yeah, it's still one of my prized EQs and boost. It's like it does so much. You can get into fuzz territory. You can make it sound more like a treble booster. You can use it as straight up overdrive, or just use it as intended as a boost with the flexibility of having the EQ, which is brilliant because you can put it before or after a pedal. You don't have buffers in that, right? So it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't react poorly with, let's say, something like a fuzz face, where if you want to boost into the fuzz face, you're not going to have a negative impact. And then for Yanis, I remember telling you about the Miesniks, and you were like, okay, like what's different about it? You were kind of like, yeah, okay, I know you like pedals and stuff, but like I haven't heard of this pedal. What's special about it? And I was like, you have to try it. Yeah, okay. I have two. I have two of them. I have the double one. I think that's the one you have, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like two independent Miesniks. Have that one. I have the other one where there's just a boost. So you have the pedal, and then there's a part of it that's a boost if you want to boost more volume into it.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So it's two different takes on the same circuit, and I love both. I could actually see like a board where I would have both those pedals on, so I could have like two different takes on the same sound. But what's special about it is that you can make it sound kind of like a Klon if you want to. So you could use it as like a lower gain thing. You could use it more like a King of Tone. You can go into more heavy rock territory. I even pulled off some early Black Sabbath tones with it. So nice. I mean, he's made a fucking killer pedal, and a lot of people don't know about it. I've had people write to me say, like, boy, I've never heard of this company. Like, I've never heard of this pedal. I'm like, I have a playlist. Go watch it.
Yeah, but this is something that doesn't, like, statements like that do not surprise me. If we think about that, so there's this website called Effects Database, and they kind of keep track about new pedal releases or new companies, coming out of nowhere. And if I'm subscribed to their Instagram channel, and it's like one time a week, they're like, we've added 13 new companies and 20 new pedals. Where you're like, what the fuck? 13 new companies? Really?
Yeah.
It's like there are 13 people more in this world that are actually convinced that launching a pedal company is a good idea. And then statistically, 1 out of 100 is going to make it, because for some reason the pedal lands on the desk of a influential artist, or it lands on its pedal board, or it lands in the hands of maybe an influencer, that has enough followers that actually have a certain like purchase power, and then but everybody has to decide if they want to depend on these factors or not. And I, for myself, in this moment, I don't want to depend on that. It either works because it's good and people recognize it's good, or it's not. And then I'm just doing this at a lower level, and because I enjoy it, and not because I'm in the position where I gladly don't have to live of it, because things are very, very quiet right now. The industry in its current state is complaining a lot about the lack of sales, and that's kind of a good segue into the main topic, because what's the news that has been kind of dominating almost the entire May so far is that Sam Ash, which is the largest family-owned MI retail business in the US, is going to close after 100 years of running this business, which is like crazy. And for those of you who are located in the EU and have never even heard of Sam Ash, which is possible. I mean, not everybody is like looking into other markets and to other markets players, but essentially, if like Sam Ash was like the biggest family-owned chain of musical instrument stores. They I think the ultimate number of locations was like 27 or 28 all throughout the US, which is not as much as Guitar Center had, but that's a different story. And Guitar Center is not family-owned. So, and to put it into context, I mean. That would be, like, from the magnitude of things, that would be as if Anderton's is going to close. Although those two have a very different profile. Like, Anderton's is one location only, but it's family-owned since the start. And it has grown substantially. So it's kind of a big player in Europe and even up to some extent, like, in the world. And, so... essentially, in March they started. So Sam Ash in March they started to close 18 stores. That was like kind of the beginning, and they even closed the flagship store, which is in Manhattan. It's located in Manhattan. And then recently, May 2nd, they announced that the company would go out of business. And that they would liquidate the rest because apparently they have... oh, my light just went off. hold on a
ghosts?
Second. Yeah. Doesn't want to work. I don't know what's going on. Doesn't matter.
Lighting is important, man.
Lighting is important, yeah. I know.
Now it's 100%. Out. We're going to lose viewers.
If I lose the other one, that would be terrible. Then I have to find a solution. Doesn't matter. So, and apparently in the beginning of May, they were still trying to find a buyer. But to kind of keep the IP and the website and everything and essentially the chain open, because I'm not sure if this is still accurate, but apparently there's about 900 jobs at stake, which is quite a lot.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of people. So, but they have not found anyone. And then a little bit later in May, they filed for the Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, which is, it's kind of the ultimate nail in the coffin. And it's interesting so obviously they have made public statements about what exactly happened here. And there's like two statements that kind of stick out. One of them is that they kind of blame the COVID-19 pandemic, or like the post-COVID times, and there were declining sales. Sales were going back, which is true to some extent, but it doesn't apply to everyone. It's like there are other people who are still doing quite well, although we had a drop in sales after the pandemic because people spent their money elsewhere because they were able to. Mm-hmm. And the other statement was that they said the rent, the cost of renting the places where they had the stores went up significantly, which caused their expenses, their monthly expenses to kind of explode. Mm. And while both statements have there's some sense behind it, what I don't understand is if you see that. So if I run a business, and obviously I have no idea how to run a business as big as Sam Ash, but if somebody comes around and says, hey, you're renting this shop and the rent is going to be double next year, my reaction would be, okay, let's look into our numbers and let's see if it's still worth keeping that place or maybe moving elsewhere. as you would with your apartment. If your landlord comes around tomorrow and says, "Oh, by the way, in August we're going to increase the rent by 50%," you're in a position to decide, okay, do I want to keep paying that rent, or do I want to move elsewhere and find something cheaper? And that's something that I mean, if they have a Manhattan store, I mean, rent in Manhattan has to be terrifying because it's Manhattan. But yeah, if the cost of renting these spaces has been going up so much, why didn't they react to that and change to a different location? That's something I don't get.
Maybe it's the viability of like if you do a projection of how much things are costing versus how much you get in profit, perhaps they weren't seeing the interest of going down this route, and this became like the exit for them to get out of this business. So if you think about it, you have 28 stores, 900 employees, overhead is going up for every single one of your branches. You have to consider that your employees are going to be asking for a higher wage because their rent is going up too. Then when you look at the profit margin, you go, well, geez, this is declining year after year after year. It would be logical to just shut down the place, say, okay, we're filing for bankruptcy, get out while we're still ahead, because maybe eventually things would have caught up with them. So maybe they were being preventive in their eventual downfall. So they decided to kind of like Jerry Springer did, not Jerry Springer, but Jerry Seinfeld did with the Seinfeld show when it was at the top, he just stopped. Maybe that's one of those things. It's like, okay, we still make profit, but in 5 years from now, we're not going to make that much. Let's just shut it all down. I'm speculating. I don't know for sure because I can't see a company like that not making projections with the current market versus what the market's going to be like in the future. Sure, COVID made a boost in sales for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
But I went into Sam Ash and they sold a lot of stuff, not just guitars. They got t-shirts, posters, DVDs, all sorts of stuff. We had Sam Ash in Canada in a few select cities, and the ones I went to didn't even have guitars. They only had like, bobbleheads and stuff like that, some books. So
okay.
they were quite diversified in what they sold. It was all kind of related to music in some way, but I don't know, maybe it just wasn't there anymore. And that's something that I think companies have to think about. That's why we see a company like Gibson trying to buy all these different companies that are just not guitars. They're trying to diversify their portfolio just to ensure that they can keep making profit. But I think that's the issue with music, is that we're not selling hamburgers. We're not selling milk. We're not selling something that people need every day to survive.
No.
We're selling stuff that is kind of excess, if you think about it. It's like, Look at me with all those stupid guitars behind me. I don't need that many. I don't need to buy a new guitar every year or every 6 months. It's like that's I think that's the nature of guitar gear, is that it's never been grounded in solid marketing and really well thought out investment. It's always like, let's make pedals. And then that becomes big. Then, oh shit, I don't know anything about a business. I might as well get an associate that knows a little more about distribution and this and that. And those guys are distributing, but they're never going over into other brackets and expanding. They're not BlackRock,
Yeah, exactly.
They stay small. So I think that's kind of like the nature of music. We're lucky they lasted 100 years, but perhaps they didn't see where they could go from there. Like they tried everything they could. It worked for a long time, but considering where we're heading with music, maybe that's where a company says, okay, we don't know how to rebrand ourselves. We don't know how to be relevant and stay relevant with the future. You have smaller companies that have more success. You mentioned Enderton's. Enderton's, they're on YouTube. They're making a crap load of content on YouTube. As far as I know, maybe Sam Ash did it, but maybe they didn't do it as much because I never heard of them.
No,
right?
They didn't do that, and in general. So, yeah, let's let's break this down. Essentially, what they were hoping is going to happen until the end of time is that the brick and mortar concept, that you have like in certain cities all around the nation, you have there's a Sam Ash store where you can go to, and that's going to be your second home as a musician. While this is obviously a very I love that. I love to have a store that I can go to always for whatever it is. If I wanna, if I need spare parts, if I need my accessories, if I want to buy something, that would be great. I think it's a great thing. And if you have people working there with a certain expertise and with the desire to help people coming in, even better. And then the whole brick and mortar thing works. But to me, and I've been hearing the same thing from different sources, their online game wasn't that good. So while everybody was kind of getting more centralized in like, okay, why would we need 20 stores? Like, let's break it down and let's say we have 10 stores. But we take that money and we invest it in a really good online presence, which means a good online store, a good logistics system, and then actual marketing. As you said, if we look at Andertons has invested a shit ton of money into YouTube, into I think they've set up 2 or 3 different sort of recording studios where they can make videos, and that's paying out for them because they're like, there's content all the time, and they get stuff that is if something is about to be released on like this Friday, they already had the stuff 2 weeks ago and they shot the stuff, and so companies are actually relying on Anderton's marketing power, not only to promote the brand, but also to promote sales, which are then going through Anderton's, obviously, or people who can benefit from the stream and the attention that Anderton's brings to the product. And I don't see any of this with Sam Ash. They basically said, hey, we are going to do things the way we've always done things, and it's going to work out well. And at the same time, everybody else kind of, passed them by, and it worked out better for everybody. I mean, look at Sweetwater. Sweetwater, they have one location, and everything else is online, and they have like hundreds of people working at that location, and by phone and by email and by social media, they can reach everyone they want to reach. And that's essentially what's happening here. And if we break down the other statement where you say it was like the declining sales, caused by the COVID pandemic, I can see that being an issue for people over here on this side of the Atlantic, especially in the EU, because in the EU we do not have map pricing, meaning everybody can essentially sell an item what they want to if they make a profit with it or not. You could sell everything at a loss if you want to. I can let's say I have a store, I buy 100 Fender guitars, and Fender tells me the recommended sales price for this instrument is 1,000 euros. If I wanted to, I can sell them for 700, and nobody can tell me anything. Nobody can forbid me. Yeah. At some point, Fender might tell me, you know what, we're not going to renew the contract because you're causing more trouble than anything else. But and in the US we don't have that. In the US we have map pricing, which means there is a guaranteed margin, and the only way to kind of approach people and like get a better deal and therefore generate more sales is through unofficial channels. So you can't you can't advertise the guitar for lower ass map, and map is usually dictated by the brand or by the manufacturer. So, and we've seen a couple of stores going out of business on this side of the Atlantic, and in Germany, like 2 or 3 like bigger or like companies that were around for a long time, they went out of business because the margins just didn't generate enough profit for them to keep going and to keep the machine going. So I'm like, in the US, we don't have that issue. So how is it possible that declining sales can cause an operation that big to fail?
I have a theory, and this is just like my thought on this. I think that the marketing has changed with how capitalism has changed. Think about the 1950s and 60s. You were a young musician, you wanted to buy a guitar in the States. You bought from the Sears catalog. You would look at a picture, there'd be a price, you would call it in, they would send you your guitar or your amp, right?
Yeah.
And then in the 1980s, you didn't have to rely on Sears because now there were more brick and mortar stores.
Yeah.
There was a little more competition. Over here, on this side of the Atlantic, you had a company, Thomann, who was completely changing the game. They were getting bigger. They were changing the whole catalog concept. Now the catalog is online.
Yeah.
You go on your computer, you look at the price, and you order it. You don't have to order it by phone. You just click on a button, instant purchase. It's to you within a few days. Which in the States and Canada is not a thing. Okay, that's something we have to keep in mind. Here in Europe, all the countries are all bunched up together. You buy a guitar from Germany. I'm in Belgium. Usually within 2 to 3 days, I have what I bought. In Canada, if you're in Alberta and you bought something in Ontario, that's like a 4-day drive. It can take a week and a half, 2 weeks before you get what you bought.
Right.
So the impulsivity to purchase something and get it almost right away isn't all that rewarding in North America. As with Europe, you buy something, you get it really, really quickly. So that is also another challenge that I think those companies over there are facing is, how do I get this product to that consumer so they're happy? Sweetwater adds candies in there. You get your candies, you're happy. Other companies don't really do that, but it's kind of like, it sounds kind of kitschy, but you know, you get your guitar quite fast, or whatever you purchase with Sweetwater, faster than with other companies. And I don't know what it is that they're doing differently, but when I was in Canada, I bought from Sweetwater a few times, and I got it quicker than I did from Long & McQuaid, which was the big store in Canada. Okay, so I think all those little attentions that they are paying to their customer, trying to modernize themselves, try to position themselves in a more competitive way, I think that's what makes them relevant. So if you talk about buying guitar, just a guitar, a bass, or whatever, with an American, they're going to talk about Sweetwater first, Guitar Center. Sam Ash is all the way down the line. Like no one says, oh man, I bought this new guitar from Sam Ash. It's so cool. You never hear it. They always mention those top two. So perhaps Sam Ash became irrelevant to the common musician just because they were trying to diversify so much that they weren't appealing to the everyday musician. If I go into a Long & McQuaid or maybe Sweetwater or Thomann, any of those big stores, if they're aware of their customers, they're going to even have a section where they have microphones, audio interface.
Yeah.
They might have some cameras too, because they know now that we're on social media. Some of us are producing content online. If you go into some other stores, they don't even have that. Like they're going to have a Shure SM57, maybe a mixer, but they don't have anything for online recording or for home recording.
Yeah.
So being aware of how your demographic or your consumers are changing and adapting to that makes you keep up with the race. You know, if you fall behind, eventually you just have to call it quits. You're like, these guys are 15 laps in front of me. I'm never catching up. That's kind of how I see this.
The other two things that definitely have changed. Well, one thing hasn't changed. So there's this, especially in this industry, there's this cycle that is happening, I would say every 6 to 8 years, where you have a new generation of people starting to pick up an instrument. But that's a cycle, and I know I've said it a few times, but I can't say this and I can't stretch this enough. It's like the industry is not going with that cycle. They're just producing and they're coming up with new stuff and new stuff and new stuff because they want to stay relevant. Because if you have something new to report, like, hey, we have a new guitar, hey, we have a new pedal, hey, we have a new amplifier, blah, 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 then obviously you stay in people's conversations. You know, and have you heard the new blah, 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 blah. And people can talk about it and people can voice their opinions and we can sit here and we can talk about it and, you know, talk about how we think these things are going to turn out and whatnot. But that's one thing. It's like you have to kind of stick with the cycle. And I know from a business perspective, and especially if we have very different business kind of minds, business cultures in Europe than we have in the US. Because, you know, people always think like, oh, you know, we need to grow the company. Well, there's no endless growth. There's no endless growth, and growth might be pausing, especially in this industry. And how about instead of like going with, hey, we need to grow the company, we need to scale the company, we go with, let's, at least for the next 3 to 4 years, keep the company at a steady pace, you know, and be happy that we can pay our employees, we can maintain all our facilities, we can still buy new shit because people are going to buy new shit, you know, not all of them, but no, a lot of people are going to feel like they want to purchase something new. How about we do this, and then when the next cycle comes, we're like, nice, let's use this wave of new musicians and let's grow the company to the next level. I know it's very unpopular to say this because, you know, you want better numbers and increasing numbers every year. But let's face it, this isn't electric cars, you know? This isn't electric cars. It's not it's not the energy industry, you know, where you can come up with a new set of solar panels that are more efficient every year and, you know, people upgrade. It's not. It's just not.
People are not dependent on pedals. They're not dependent on guitars.
No.
The only thing that they might be dependent on, and it's kind of seen as really small and almost irrelevant, is guitar picks, guitar strings, straps, stuff like that. They go into a music store, they got $10. They need strings. We need strings. Eventually they break, they wear, we need to change them. But a $10,000 Gibson on a wall isn't something we need. Like, I'm not like, you know, I really need to go spend $5,000 in a music store today. I need it. Like, it's an actual need. It's a physical need. It's not like you're like, man, I'm really thirsty right now. I'm going to stop at this Aldi. For those of you in North America that don't know, it's a grocery store.
It exists.
I'm going to stop here.
It exists. It exists in the US.
They do in the US. I've never seen them in Canada. Like, when I got here, I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, I actually, I'm not sure where, but I've seen, it was in Chicago. So I was passing by on my way from the airport to the city. And I was passing by a place where they had like several stores like combined, and they had an Aldi, and they had here it's called TK Maxx, but it's called TJ Maxx, where you can buy like design and brand items at a reduced price because they're from last year's, you know, season, you know, last year's collection and whatnot. And they had these two things. So I was like, oh, Aldi, nice.
But, you know, you stop into a grocery store because you need to rehydrate yourself, or you need to nourish yourself. Those are like primary needs. In the guitar industry, there's no primary need whatsoever. It's all secondary and sometimes even further down the line. So that's where I was saying earlier, to adapt yourself, you have to create the want. So companies have to make you want something. Now, do you need it is completely irrelevant in this particular sphere, because you don't need another fuzz. You don't need another boost. You don't need anything. If you've covered the basics, everything else is excess. And I mean, I'm in a good position to show right behind me what excess looks like, right? It's like, I got all these freaking pedals. I'm never using half of them most of the time. It's like I just pick, and I have the options of being able to pick, but I mean, I don't need all this shit. This is just excess. I'm just irresponsible. I'm impulsive. I buy shit. That's why I can say that stuff, because I can prove it behind me. That's what it looks like. But when you take a store that is there trying to give you what you think you need versus you walking in there and seeing shit, and, oh my God, I don't have a Fender Champ, or I don't have an old Gibson amplifier, or now you're creating a need. You're just like being impulsive, and we tend to sometimes be very obsessive, like researching shit, trying to make sure that it's worth spending $2,000 on this new guitar. Yeah, but I don't have an offset guitar. And your wife looks at you like, do you need an offset guitar? Well, I mean, look, I'm doing YouTube here, and you come up with bullshit, and you try to reason with yourself, right?
Yeah, we all do it.
That's what the industry lives on. Now, when you take that back, you start to look at, do I need another guitar? Oh shit, man, I got to pay rent. Gas is going up. Right now, I'm looking at going back to Canada, and the difference between $800, or not dollars, but 800 euros that I'm paying per month for groceries is more like 1,400 Canadian. So that is a steep step up in terms of groceries. So when I go back home, now I got to think, cell phones are not as competitive in Canada as they are in Europe. So usually it's like 2 cell phones with like really limited plan is about $150 Canadian. For 80 bucks here, I'm covering 4 people. Yeah. So the cost of living has gone up where I live, and it's going up everywhere too. So that's another thing you have to think about. It's like Americans, their minimum salary is quite fucking low, but price on rent goes up, price on energy goes up, price on everything goes up. So perhaps for consumers that are looking at somewhere like Sam Ash, maybe they don't have a very diversified portfolio when it comes to different guitars, different pedals, and things like this. And when they're going in with, let's say, $100 to buy a pedal, and all you have is like this fancy boutique stuff that starts at $250, maybe you do become irrelevant, because now you're not paying attention to your customers and the fact that they don't have as much spending money. And it's something that's important, and we just don't address it enough, but we are living currently worldwide a situation where shit is going up and our money is not following the market. No. So that creates a big disparity between our purchasing power and the companies being able to stay afloat and keep selling stuff to us. If you can't afford it, they're not selling. And if they're not selling, if they can't adapt and they can't figure it out, they're going to go the way of the dodo bird.
Yeah, 100%. There's another thing that definitely kind of breaks into this whole concept of change, which is the way people purchase. And that has nothing to do with our industry. You'll see it in all the other industries as well. And companies like Amazon, perfectionized it to the point where people do not even go out anymore to spend their money for a couple of reasons. I think you can apply this to most Western countries, but I'll take Germany as an example. If I live outside the big city centers, if I live, let's say, 50 kilometers from Cologne, where I am located, and I live in a small city, in a small town, and I don't have, the clothing stores that you'll find in the city center. I don't have the electronics stores, blah, 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 blah. All this stuff is not, what I essentially have is maybe 2 or 3 supermarkets, I have a few kiosks, where I can buy like shit on the go. I might actually have, I don't know, maybe I have like a coffee bakery. So I have the essential things. But in this town, I don't have the stuff that you'll find in a bigger city with, let's say, 1 million people living in the city. So now I have two choices. I can either take the car and make the day trip to the next bigger city because I want to shop clothing. I want to shop maybe electronics, maybe I need furniture, so I go to one of these stores, or I go to IKEA, what people usually do in Europe, they go to IKEA. But that means I have to travel with the car, which means I have to spend money on gas. I have to park. Parking inside the cities is really expensive these days. And then I have to obviously do it on a day where I don't have to work. So either I need to take a day off, or I do it on the weekend, which is fucking insane because the city is full of people and it's usually not the smart ones. It's usually the guys who don't know where they're going and they look everywhere else and then they run you over. And a lot of these guys are...
It's a knuckle draggers.
Oh, it's usually people, and then or people who don't know how a line at the cash desk works. Fuck's sake. Anyways, so you have that. That's option number one. Option number two is you order all the shit online, and you can even, if you're not sure about the sizes, get the next bigger size as well, and then all that shit arrives to your door, and then you keep everything you actually need and are going to use. And everything else, you just return for free. You don't have to pay anything for the return shipping. And there is even stuff that's so inexpensive that Amazon says, no, you don't have to return it. You can just keep it. So it happened.
Tolman does the same thing.
Yeah, happened to us at some point where I bought something like so small where like the return is not worth it. So apparently, Amazon has a deal with that vendor on the marketplace where, like, if somebody wants to return it, they just keep it and you have to give them the money back anyways.
Yeah, Tolman does the same thing. If you buy, let's say I bought a USB port, a Lindy USB port, and I bought it off at Tolman, and the one they sent me was defective.
Yeah.
So I got back in contact with them and they said, keep the unit. We'll send you another one because we don't want to add to, all the CO2 in the atmosphere and all this green piece kind of thing. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And then I found out that the thing I had, it was just a defective USB cable. The whole unit still works. So now I got two.
Yeah.
Right. So it's shit like that, to your point, I think is making a really big dent in the old system. It's, if you think of your grandparents, they would go downtown. Downtown was the main strip, and you had all these diversified shops that your grandparents could make, maybe a morning or an afternoon, and they would go shop, they'd grab everything they needed, and then they'd come back home. Now, to your point, it's like, okay, my town doesn't have that many shops. They have all the usual suspects that almost cater more to the tourists than to people like me. So what do? I can go to the one place where they sell pastries. It's going to cost me a lot because there's no competition.
Yeah.
And it's that lack of competition in small towns that makes it so that you're sometimes forced to go somewhere else to find what you want. And as you stated, parkings are not cheap. So now you have to drive there, or you have to make it like a day trip where you say, okay, maybe I take the train, or maybe I take the tram, or I take whatever. You find some other means to get there, but now you're on a schedule. It's a pain in the ass. It took you forever.
Yeah.
You get back home, you're pissed off. You're like, let's not do this again. Or you sit down at your computer, find everything you want, click. 2 days from now, you're going to get it. And if it's not to your liking, you send it back. Yep. Holy shit, man. The difference in purchasing power that you have between those two things. One of them gives more money in your pockets while the other makes you spend in excess. Because let's not forget, if you're gone for 4 or 5 hours and you got your kids with you and you're shopping, the kids are going to be hungry. You're going to have to bring them to the restaurant. That's another expense you didn't incur. There's another thing too. It's like over here in Europe, you have to pay for the damn fucking toilets. So if you want to go take a crap, it's going to cost you money. It's like, if you're at home, you order.
Unless you not to be mistaken with the actual phrase, you shit where you eat. So you go to the restaurant and then you take a shit. Then,
well, yeah, that's another point too.
Yeah, that's
so word to the wise.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta plan your dump. That's the
plan your dump.
You gotta plan your dump. Otherwise, it's not gonna work.
I want that on a T-shirt. Plan your dump.
Plan your dump. Be smart. Plan your dump. No, but you're
right.
You're absolutely right. It's exactly like that. You have to take all of this into account, and then at the end of the day, so if I make the calculation, and I say, okay, it's 50 kilometers from here, from outside of the city to this city center here. So that means I'm 100 kilometers with a fully loaded car. I have to look at least 20 to 25 euros of parking. I have to look at, feeding the family, feeding the kids, and so on and so forth. And then just on the trip, I'm spending 150 euros, something like that.
Yep.
Just to go shopping, for what next summer is not going to fit them anyways. No. Nah. So the convenience factor of online sales and online purchase is something that shouldn't be underestimated, and also not in our industry, but there are still, and you wouldn't believe what I'm dealing with on a daily basis, there are still people who are absolutely they absolutely you could say it's impossible to tell them that is a good idea, however you do it. Like, no, we have our store business. It's going great. Yeah. Right now. And also, like, is it going to harm you to try and get an additional shop window in the online world? It's not going to harm you. You can do it so fast and so easy these days. You don't even, if you wanted to do it, you do not even need a programmer. There are these platforms like Shopify, for example, or WooCommerce that let you set up the stuff. And, if you have someone taking care of your ERP system, that person can make the connection anyway. So you don't need to pay an additional developer. And then obviously we have marketplaces like Reverb, for example, that you can use where you don't even pay them anything until you make the sale. So until you actually sell something, you're not paying them anything. So it's like, this is like a free trial, essentially. If it doesn't work, well, you shut it down. Fine. If it doesn't work for you, but if it doesn't work for you, like with everything, if something doesn't work for you, you need to ask yourself why and dig into it. If online sale doesn't work for you, you need to find out what the reasons are. Is your inventory not interesting or appealing to people? Is it your pricing? Is it sometimes it's like people are attracted to photography of stuff. I've seen online shops where the shop is great, everything looks amazing, but their photography is terrible. Absolutely terrible. So you're like this last bit, you couldn't do that. You're not able to, like, you set up an amazing online shop, but then you're taking pictures like you would take the picture of a building while you're on vacation. No.
That's a very, like, there's something to unpack in what you just said, and that is how companies adapt to an ever-changing market. So, for example, you have your store, It's all about location, location, location. So that's the old motto. It's like, okay, I'm in the perfect place. I got ample parking. There's other stores around me. People are going to see me.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a sign that's designed by the local designer that's going to make that. I'm going to have like posters in my windows, the whole thing, like the old way to attract clients.
Yeah.
So that's what they know, and they've mastered that. They're really good at it. And so localized, they're doing well. The online presence, they kind of throw in like everything at it, hoping something sticks. And like you said, if you take a shitty picture, you can't expect it to sell very well. Why? Because you're not making it appealing. That's how the person sees it. If you have a really nice display counter in your store with the pedals, everything is well lit, everything is super easy for the person to see. They go, oh, wow, that's the Wazacraft Blues driver. How much is that? Right? Now you're engaging in a conversation because you made it appealing.
Yeah.
But if it's stuck underneath like other boxes of pedals and the person is like, if I ask this person to go in there, everything's going to fall apart. Fuck it. I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, if you're that dismissive about it, you're not making a sale. So if your pictures look like shit, you're being dismissive and people are not going to be interested. So the worst thing that you could do is spend just a little bit of money on a photographer that comes into your shop once in a while, takes pictures of the new inventory, put it up online, and that person comes in with their gear. You don't have to invest on shit.
No.
And you pay that person whatever they're asking, and there you go. And if you don't know how to put it up online, you get someone that's really good at multimedia, someone that's good at Instagram or Facebook or whatever.
Yes.
And you start to put stuff up online, because that's the other concept too. This shit is free. Instagram is free. YouTube is free. Facebook. So if you go on there and you build up an audience, and if you say, hey, if you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, you're going to get exclusives on what's coming up, or maybe our Instagram, you're going to see pictures of the new gear that's coming in. You can tease people. You can entice them to be interested in the new stuff that's coming in. But these companies, they only know the old model, which works locally for them.
Yeah.
But their online presence suffers because they can't adapt, because they're trying to use an old world marketing scheme that doesn't apply to the online one. The online one, the kids are killing it.
Yeah.
The younger generation is fucking brilliant at it.
Yeah, that's true. 100%. I am trying to find out what exactly their depth is. Well, we're getting back to Sam Ash.
Yeah.
So according to several sources, the company owes around $20 million to Tiger Finance, which seems to be some sort of like money provider, some sort of bank, maybe to help, cover expenses and whatnot, but also an additional $20 million to landlords and suppliers, including Yamaha, Gibson, and Fender. So there's stuff that's sitting in their shelves and hanging on their walls that has not been paid yet to those companies, which is definitely not a good thing. However, the assumed value of all their assets apparently sits around 300 million. So it seems like they're, if nobody, like in sort of a last minute action purchases Sam Ash, and I kind of doubt it's going to happen, because it's a lot of money, and then what are you going to do with that? You would essentially have to like restructure the whole thing from the ground. You wouldn't be able to keep all the locations open. So what would be the game plan? Purchasing an operation like that.
It would require someone that understands a business of that scale way more than you and I. Because, I have ideas, but it doesn't mean that they're applicable to this particular business model, right? Because I'm thinking like, oh, you could go in there and have a team that's more modern. They would like try to have an online presence. Yeah, but you need to recoup their debt first.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that the people that are there, you can keep them on the payroll. And if you can't, you have to have someone that knows how to let them go, close down the branches. Which branches are more successful? There's an analysis of what they owe, how much money they're making. Can you make a projection on how you can increase sales, stay relevant, be competitive? It's like, holy shit, that's beyond my pay grade, man, because I don't know how to do that. And anyone that can might be looking at them and seeing what, like, you just dug up their debt, right? And I'm sure, like, someone that's really into buying businesses, they probably have other websites that they can go to and see even more behind the scenes stuff. And they might be like, yeah, and they might be like, yeah, no, let the ship sink, not worth it. And that's sad. It's sad because I would have thought like a company maybe like Sweetwater or Guitar Center might have jumped on that, seeing like the locations are already there. They're well placed. It did all the marketing stuff that goes around it.
Guitar Center,
if it's not worth it.
Guitar Center essentially is also in a huge debt, and the only thing that keeps them floating is the I think the value of the brand and the asset value. And then Sweetwater kind of went the Thomann way. One centralized location where the entire operation is running out of and controlled from. And everybody's working there. And whatever kind of satellite operation they have, they're going to do that through some kind of third party. Like, for example, Thomann bought a major stake in Geva Music and Geva Music Distribution, which is a German distributor, but they also have a Geva Music US distribution. So they distributed, I think it was a lot of like drum brands inside the US, and they have the warehousing. Everything is where is it? I think somewhere like upstate New York, if I'm not mistaken. That's where all that stuff takes place, and that was their entry into the US market. But it's not like they had to like establish a second location, a second Thomann location. They essentially, purchased, like acquired an operational asset. Like was a very good acquisition of said distributor, and that's how they run in the US, and they handle lots of the shipping and returns and whatnot. And so for Sweetwater to be like, yeah, sure, let's buy Sam Ash, that would mean they kind of go away from that centralized sort of approach, where it's like one location and everything's been running out of here, and we're gonna keep it that way. So, and then again, if the asset value is 300 million, that's not it. There's more to it. So, I would expect this to be an acquisition that's around 500 million, at least. And who has that kind of money? Everybody right now, everybody in this industry is super careful with spending. And there are only a few people, those who are very good at marketing and those who like have a good history in being good at marketing. I mean, look at JHS. It seems like one time a month they come out with like some new thing. Even though this last thing, that the Beach Boys kind of themed a pedal series, is a Sweetwater exclusive. Doesn't matter. They sold 800, 1,000 units or something. Let me find that out.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
JHS Beach Boys. Making gear for the Beach Boys. But that was a collaboration actually. So that's JHS, Benson Amps, and Keeley. So
that's right.
Yeah. So they made the Good Vibrations. Yeah. retailer Sweetwater has joined forces with JHS Pedals, Benson M's, and Keeley Electronics for 5 limited edition effects that capture the tone and essence of the Beach Boys. Does it say anything about the number? No. It just says limited edition. But, I mean, the Good Vibrations is $2.99 US. The Punchline Bass Station, which is like this DI channel strip for bass, is $4.99. The Benson M Surfs Up, which is like the spring reverb tank, is $21.99. The Keeley Electronics California Girls is $2.99. The Keeley Electronics I Get Around is $2.99. So there's nothing about like how many they have, but that stuff is not, it's not super cheap. The collection lands just in time for the new Disney Plus documentary on the Beach Boys. There you go. Seeing an opportunity and, making the best out of it. And that's something that JHS has been doing pretty well. So
they have, and you have to consider too, like, we're in 2024. How many fans of the Beach Boys are still out there? Like, my kids don't know who the Beach Boys are. And I'm sure my eldest, who's 22, doesn't know who the Beach Boys are. So we're talking very niche at this point. You have people that are still alive that were fans back in the day, but you also have a generation that's probably more like the Gen X and the older millennials that know the Beach Boys because they were introduced to them. And maybe there's a few like younger people that just happen upon the music and love it. But in general, it's like, if you say the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, a lot of people know who they are. But the Beach Boys, like, we're talking in the 1950s to 60s, right? It's like, that's a long time ago. So it's a bit niche, but musicians still react. They see Keeley, they see Benson, JHS, and they're like, oh, just foaming at the mouth, new products. And I'm sure they're awesome. I have a few JHS here, man, and dude, they fucking make great pedals. I've never tried Keeley stuff. That's one of those companies that I've never, ever managed to get my hands on their stuff.
They make great stuff. And
Benson I've never tried either, although I've heard like great things about them. So yeah, it's the marketing again, the online presence, being able to build the hype. Building the hype is super important to creating the desire for the new thing. Because if you have a pedal and you don't know how to create that buzz, that hype, get people's attention, you see sometimes product releases that just completely flop. It's like the thing comes out, it's not the name, it's not the company or the reputation, it's not the sound or the circuit, it's nothing. It's just, I don't know, the everything about the marketing and the release just fell apart. It's like no one was gravitating towards this new thing. But when it's these guys, it's like, hey, we're doing this thing. We were part of the Beach Boys documentary. They asked us to make some stuff that's relevant to the Beach Boys. People are just like, holy shit, I want to know. Like, they could have said anything. They could have said, we were asked by Krispy Kremes to make, some new pedals, and people would have lost their shit, This is because people have respect for these companies. They love the people at the head of these companies. There's almost like I like this person, so I want to help them.
Yeah.
It's like, I like Josh from JHS, so I just want to encourage this company and buy whatever he comes out with. Wampler's kind of the same way too. But you got other companies that are detached from the audience. You don't know who's at the helm of this company. You don't know who the CEO is. But the companies that seem more like you can relate to them, they seem to fare better.
They're more approachable. They're definitely more approachable. Yeah. That's for sure. My key takeaway from this Sam Ash story is that this is not going to be the last one. This is not going to be the last one. And since we see a lot of manufacturers going into direct sale a lot more than they used to, it's not going to be the last, and it's not going to be the last big one that's going to go away, because as we explored in this past hour, it is nothing of what these people sell and what we sell in this industry is essential to life. And to be honest, if I look at I actually made an experiment. So I'm in this Facebook group, which is called paddleboard.org. It's the largest German-speaking paddleboard group. It's like, I don't know, 14,000, 15,000 members. Like, this is huge, definitely.
Yeah, it's big.
And on Facebook, you can actually set up the way you want to receive notifications on the groups that you're in. So I was like, you know what? Please give me everything. I want to find out whenever someone's, losing a fart in that group. I want to find out about it.
Losing a fart.
So
nice.
So I did that for a month, and I found out that 85% approximately of the posts were like, hey, sadly, I gotta get rid of these pedals. Hey, unfortunately, I have to, clean up my pedal storage, my pedal locker. It saddens me, but I have to. It's the usual, first like introductory words. But most of the stuff was like people getting rid of pedals. So the other thing is that the used market is flooded these days. It's so flooded, and people, without even knowing that they're competing with each other because they're selling used stuff, essentially, they're competing. There's a competition between thousands of people who are selling their used pedal or their used guitar or amplifier and whatnot, to fund other things. So that's the other sort of factor going in there. Everything that was once purchased at a retailer or at a manufacturer or whatever it was, at some point it's going to get back into the ecosystem at a lower price and ultimately competing with what this thing costs new and with thousands of people selling the same thing. And so most of that stuff does not retain its value. And let's face it, if people are desperate to get rid of something, they are okay, with cutting a loss.
That's right. They're losing farts.
They're losing fart. The question is, does the fart sound more like a tube screamer or does it sound more like an ODR1?
More like a big muff.
More like a big muff.
Big and farty. Woolly. But that's another topic that I think at some point we should maybe address. I think you can let me know what you think, but we're kind of like in this fifth industrial wave right now with AI coming up and technology changing so fast. And I'm wondering, like, for content creators, for, people that are building these products, like these designs for circuits, trying to come up with some new ways to improve. And now you can go to like ChatGPT and ask it questions about building circuits and stuff like that. Are we going to see even more flooding from people who don't know what the fuck they're doing, but they're relying on AI to help them make the products? Are we going to see like a saturation in the market at some point? Are we going to see more implementation of AI with digital products? Even what we're doing right now, what if we had an AI assistant that was answering questions from people if we were live streaming this stuff? Like, there's all these things that are going to be catching up with us. And even those of us who think that they're at the forefront, they're keeping up, they're leading the pack. I think AI might change a lot of this and throw us back almost a decade behind what AI can do at some point. And maybe Joe Blow sits down at the computer, asks AI to come up with a new pedal circuit, and helps him, do the marketing and come up with all the wording. And you have like this fake AI person that's just selling you on this pedal. And like, there might be something interesting there to talk about. Because we're talking about like staying relevant and keeping up with the race. That's another one that I think might be coming up.
Yeah. I have a proposal. Let's talk about AI in our next episode, because
That'd be great.
I think it's a really fascinating topic. I am a little bit fed up with it right now because because the thing is that everybody in every sort of kind of environment, whatever it is, talks about AI here, AI there. People talk about it in different talk shows and on the television, and they're like, is AI going to like cut my job, and is AI going to replace this and that and whatnot? So there are so many layers to this that let's talk about it in the next episode.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to come up with ideas of what I think could maybe be like some of the pros.
Yeah.
And if you want, you could take the stance where you take like the cons.
Yeah.
And this way we have a back and forth of sharing ideas and seeing what the potential outcome would be of going down this road. Because I think we're going there inevitably. So we'll figure something out. We'll come up with something. I think this could be a fun episode. Not that I want to dwell on it forever and ever, but since we're talking about like how multifaceted the music industry is and how we try to adapt, I think this is just a new challenge that's coming up for every single one of us. It's going to impact different people in different ways, and we should kind of just go down and see, like, is this a necessary evil, or is this going to be like a savior, or is this going to be one of those things like everyone's going to make like fake Freddie Mercury singing to their music, and you can't Queen can't sue you for using the likeness of someone else, or like, what is it going to look like? What's that landscape going to look like? So yeah, that could be a fun episode.
Awesome. Let's do that. Let's talk about it in the next episode.
Awesome.
As for this episode, we need to put it to an end. But
we need to put it down.
We need to put it down.
Close your eyes, Bobby. Close your eyes. I like it.
Yeah. And also, next episode, what we're going to do if we don't hear from David Sellers. David Sellers. We are going to draw another lucky winner, a new lucky winner of the Jupiter Effects Pink Wallow. Until the next episode, we wish you a very good and very relaxing weekend, and enjoy what you do. And see you next episode.
Cheers.
Cheers.